Welcome back to Harmonize Your Life, Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. I am so glad that you have joined us again this week for another informational, inspirational, motivational conversation on self-care, health, and wellness. Fitness. We run the gamut on this podcast. The whole purpose of this podcast is to bring information, to bring inspiration and motivation to our community around issues of self-care, health, wellness, mental health, fitness, nutrition, all the things that make for a harmonious lifestyle. And I am glad that you have joined us again this week as we are finishing up season 10 of our podcast. Yes, I cannot believe we have been facilitating and recording this podcast for the almost 3 full years. Next year, we'll be going into our 4th year of this podcast. How time flies. But this season 10 has is comprised of our conversations from the month of June 2023, July 2023, and now, believe it or not, August 2023. Where does the time go, really? So we've started our month already with an intriguing conversation with Dr. Anika Wilson Brown. I pray that you were blessed by that conversation. And I know that you're going to be blessed by the conversation that I'm going to have today with another sister, another friend, who is going to come in, and we're going to share from her personal journey, and we're just going to share from the perspective of women in ministry. And so we're going to be having this conversation, and I want you to stay with us, and we'll be right back. I'll introduce my next guest to you right after this. All right. Well, I am so delighted to welcome to the Harmonize Your Life podcast another new voice to the podcast community, our podcast community, another sister, another friend, and soror, the Reverend Dr. Danielle L. Brown. I want to introduce her to you formally, and then she will share with us. She'll begin to share in our dialogue. And I know once you hear us discussing these issues, you're going to be blessed by this intriguing conversation. Dr. Danielle Brown, saved and filled with the Holy Ghost at an early age. I love that. The Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown finds great joy and satisfaction in learning, living, and preaching the gospel. And when I say she is somebody's preacher, Reverend Dr. Brown was licensed to preach on July 17, 2003. All right, anniversary. And what's this? 20 years? Good. 30 years for me and 20 for you. I love that. She was licensed on July 17, 2003 by Cathedral International, the historic Second Baptist Church in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and ordained by the American Baptist Churches June 3rd, 2012. An increasingly sought after preacher, workshop leader, with the ability to communicate across generations. Dr. Brown has had the opportunity to share the gospel throughout the country and in South Africa. Educated in the Perth Amboy Public Schools, Reverend Dr. Brown went on to attend Virginia State University, where she was a provost scholar, and 3 sport athlete. After teaching in the Richmond Public Schools, Reverend Brown responded to God's call to return to her hometown and the church of her rearing, where she served faithfully as the pastoral staff on the pastoral staff for 15 years. On August 7, 2021, Dr. Brown was elected the 10th pastor, senior pastor of the Shiloh Baptist Church in Plainfield, New Jersey. She is the first woman to hold the position since the church's founding in 1908. Dr. Brown has served in various capacities. She's worked to develop and implement ministry programs and strategies. She has a passion for mentoring and assisting in the development of faith and community leaders. As such, she is a site supervisor in the Princeton Theological Seminary, New Brunswick Theological Seminary, Apilla College, field education programs, and has taught on the adjunct faculty of New York Theological Seminary, served 2 terms on the board of trustees of New Brunswick Theological Seminary. And she's also been active in the Rotarian Association of the American Baptist Churches of New Jersey as past moderator and on the ordination committee. She is a co-mentor of the Pointer Brown Goodman Doctoral Fellows at the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, and she has the honor of serving she and I together on the advisory board of the Women in Ministry Conference convened by the Reverend Dr. Cynthia L. Hale, her spiritual mother, my big sister and mentor. And she is also serving as the assistant secretary of the Hampton University Ministers Conference. She is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And in addition to that, in addition to her ecclesiastical work, she is active in her local community as a member of the Perth Amboy Area NAACP, serving on the mayor's strategic planning team, 100 days committed in the city of Perth Amboy, and elected to the Perth Amboy Board of Education. Through the years, she has been a recipient of multiple awards, recognitions for her work in the church and the community. In 2022, she was inducted into the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. She is both a servant and scholar. Reverend Dr. Brown holds a Master of Education, Bachelor of Science degrees from Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia, both a Master of Divinity and Master of Arts degree from New Brunswick Theological Seminary in New Brunswick, New Jersey. She holds a Doctor of Ministry degree from Palmer Theological Seminary at St. David's, Pennsylvania, where she studied leadership and church renewal. Dr. Brown loves God. She loves God's church. She is a church woman and a church pastor. I love her. And she counts it an honor and a privilege to serve. And I also need to say she is a proud auntie. and she has a fur baby as well. And so, Dr. Danielle Brown, unmute yourself and talk to us today.
Hey, well, thank you, Dr. Tony, for the opportunity to come on and share. Today, just, some of my journey. And I think you and I have been talking fitness and exercise and just kind of self-improvement in that regard for a long time now.
Yeah.
This is an area that is just really, really critical, I think, and something for me that has been like a lifelong journey. In my bio, it speaks to having been a 3-sport athlete in college.
Right.
And so fitness, health, activity, right, has always been a thing. And then marrying that to ministry, right? When God wants to do something in the earth, God uses a person.
Right.
But we have to keep these temples healthy because God can't use what doesn't work, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Or what is, I think that when we are not physically well, it impedes every, what we're called to do. It impedes us carrying out
Yeah.
Right? Our assignments.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it also impacts us in spiritual and emotional places, that
Yeah.
there's no dimension of us that is not connected to the other. And so you can't really be spiritually strong and then not tend to your body, right? Your
Yeah.
physical, you know, and where one of them is lacking, others will as well, right?
Yeah. Because it's all related.
It's all interconnected.
Right.
And then when we're unwell, and now I think too, one of the things that the last year has taught me, and I'll talk about it, but the last year has taught me is that you can be functional and still unwell, right? And a lot of times
my goodness, see
we
you.
gauge wellness based on function, right?
Please talk about that. Unpack that.
And so I was elected actually this week, 2 years ago, senior pastor of the Shiloh Baptist Church, and went into Shiloh. And, at that time, coming off the pandemic, what did we have to do but work out? So I had got, doing everything. My first 3 months at Shiloh, 4 months at Shiloh, I gained about 15 pounds.
Wow.
And some of that was that, when you're the senior pastor, every Sunday they bring you pound cake. They want to feed you. But they don't want to feed you like healthy things. Nobody's bringing you a salad like, Pastor, look, we love you. We put together the best, spinach salad we ever made, right? And so now I want to pull out all my favorite recipes. And this was the cultural thing. Right. That when people take time to give you this, then you'll, and so I was in
it's one of the ways that we've expressed love in our community.
Exactly.
Through food.
It's food. And then just kind of this idea that when people offer you food, right, that you don't say no, that's offensive. And so I'm eating the pound cakes and cupcakes and,
to reject your cake is to reject you.
Exactly. So now, and then of course, everyone wants to, it's the kind of cultural thing that table food, you can get together at the table and everything is kind of a meal meeting and things like that. So I gained like about 15 pounds in those first 3 to 4 months. Then I was like, oh, hold on. Like this is not good. Like can't fit my clothes. My robes are fitting a little, snug. We need to get it together. But then I'm traveling, I'm transitioning, and balance for me. I was thinking on the line of, am I getting rest? Right? Am I functional? Am I pausing to do things that, give me life? Right? The whole kind of self-care thing and whatever. But I was gauging wellness on function. And so I'm able to run. I can do this. I can, preach this many times a day or, teach Bible study, go visit the people. And, Monday, Sunday through Thursday, I'm rolling, I'm balling. So I'm functioning. But, and I'm getting rest, right? I'm going to bed at night. So that wasn't an issue. But I wasn't making time for my exercise, right? I was not making healthy decisions around my food choices. Right. And things like that. And so I gained more weight. Then fast forward to last August, my dad got sick, went into the hospital the last week of August. It was August the 29th. My dad never came home from the hospital. So from August 29th to when he went to heaven in November, I was back and forth. So I'm pastoring church.
Now you thrust into caregiver mode.
Right. The church is growing, right? Rapidly at this point. So I've got a growing church and more people who want to bring me snacks, right? And especially because my dad is in the hospital. So we have to make sure, So I'm on the go. I'm on the road because in this season of my life, just, I am very much, and my priority is being Shiloh's pastor, but there also is a kind of a dual role that I also preach itinerantly. So there is the pastoral, but also the evangelist.
And you have a pretty extensive itinerant schedule.
Yeah, I was going, right? And so then I'm touching down, but going back to the hospital to advocate for my dad, to keep abreast of all that stuff. And at this point, I'm not sleeping, right? Not getting the sleep, not getting the rest, eating super late at night, on the road, I'm not necessarily choosing, you know, it's like easier to just kind of grab something fast food or grab this or, you know, going long stretches of the day without eating. And I gained between August and November. Well, August and then, you know, November, Thanksgiving, holidays. So between August and maybe the end of December, 35 more pounds. And when I tell you, I felt it in every getting out of the bed in the morning. I'm like, okay, I feel
you gained 35 more on top of the 15?
On top of the 15, roughly 20.
Wow. Okay.
But this weight, right, was like, hold on. My clothes didn't fit. But beyond the clothes was I felt it. Every sermon, right? It felt like my nephew, you know, he's 6. He was on my back. Like I'm holding him on my shoulders. And I'm like,
why can't another person?
Yes. And then went through a few weeks, like at the beginning of January, I lost my voice.
Okay. And
we couldn't even explain what happened, right? My voice just went out and it was raspy and hard to, you know, all of it though really had to do with how I was caring for my body and the condition that my body had gone into.
Let me ask you this question though. What was there a wake up call, like besides the weight gain? Was there anything like that, an alarm or something that went off in your mind, in your spirit or whatever that says, hey, I need to pay attention to this?
So I put my robe on, my white robe, and I could not button it. So I had to change like robes. And that was a problem, right? No, seriously. I was like, wait a minute, these vestments cost too much.
I know that's right.
Grow out of them in this period of time. You know, the cassock, not the doctoral.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, you know, it really was that. And I remember standing in my office and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Okay.
Like I'm gonna have to put the overlay over this thing because I can't button it. Okay. And that was the alarm. Okay. That said, you have to do something and do something now because we're getting ready to get out of hand. Right.
And the other thing is, and it creeps up on you. That's the thing about weight. It's insidious, yes. Right? It will creep up on you. And before you know it, you will, you know what I'm saying? You'll look up and you're like, what happened? You know?
Yeah. Right. And you've gone too long stretches, right? And anything in terms of your eating habits, your exercise habits, you know, they say anything you do for 21 days straight becomes a habit.
Exactly.
And those 21 days come fast when you're busy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you create habits that are hard to break. Yes. So when I went into the new year, one of our colleagues told me about a cleanse. And so we did this 30-day cleanse and I started eating clean and I lost some weight and I was working out. I started immediately because it was a mind thing.
Right.
Thinking about this too. So that day when I had to change the vestments.
Okay.
I started to think about this too, that I have been talking to a congregation as their senior leader for a year and some change about discipline, right? About you know, honoring your assignment.
Yeah.
And I thought about how much, not just what we say preaches, but what people see. And so that means that this congregation,
Danielle,
right?
I just literally said that right before interviewing you. The episode right before you is the one with Dr. Anika Wilson Brown. And I just said that to her.
Yeah.
That people are watching our lives, not just what's coming out of our mouth when we're preaching.
Yes.
And what are we modeling?
I'm pastoring a congregation of Black folks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Where, and so one of the other alarms, though, I didn't say this. My dad passed and my dad ultimately 20 years ago, he had a kidney transplant. He experienced kidney failure. That was the result of complications of diabetes. right? That prolonged years of high blood pressure and diabetes shot his kidneys. About 03, he had the first transplant. And then 07, maybe, he had a second transplant that was a liver and kidney transplant. Yeah. And Dad, you know, he did great. He did great. You know, COVID impacted him, you know, toward the last few years and kind of, you know, contributed to his decline. But at the end of the day, when he passed, it was that his heart wasn't strong enough anymore, right, for him to rebound. So his heart stopped. It wasn't the liver, the kidney. It was heart failure. And for me, Dr. Tony, when I got to the end of December and I'm standing there in my office with this vestment that I cannot button, right? The buttons were holding on like, you know, Savior, screaming. Right? No other help I know. Just holding on. And I'm thinking about all of this, that there is my dad, you know, that hey, I am predisposed to some of these things. My dad's baby sister, my youngest aunt, she was my heart, right? But she passed early and it was complications of diabetes, right? And then I'm thinking about, you know, you go to the doctor and everything is great, right? Levels, blood pressure, sugar. I've never been on, not even close to, you know, no pre-diabetic, none of that. We just know that it's in my family history. I'm not getting any younger. And so if I keep going in this direction, am I going to end up with the same challenges?
Which says something about the importance of us knowing our family medical history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so now the other part of it is, hey, the people are watching me. And so I'm preaching one thing, and it might be that you know, they don't see me like raggedy in other ways, right? Because I'm saying, right, try my best but they are watching my body. They know what I look like when they met me in August, and just progressively they've seen what could indicate to people a life out of control, right? Because I'm getting heavier and heavier, and that's not to fat shame. That's not to, you know, but people do take their cues from what Dr. Gina Stewart would say, these bodysuits, right? Treat us a certain way about these bodysuits because we're women, but also our bodysuits, like how we manage them. And so how do I preach to people that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? And then I am indicating to a congregation that I'm not taking care of mine. And the people in my congregation are African-American folks, right? They are Black people. They are folks who largely have probably the same family history I do, right? That there's heart disease in here, there's blood pressure in here, there's diabetes in here, right? There's obesity in here, all of these things. And I'm like, but as the shepherd, it is my responsibility to even model that which is healthy as well. So, and
then let me just say this to you. If we're not, when the people in our congregation mirror us,
absolutely,
and they're going to do what they see us do. That's why it's so important that what you're saying is so true. The people that are sitting in front of us have the same medical issues that we have as a community, and much of our issues, while we know that there are some very, very systemic things that are wrong with our healthcare system, and you know, when it comes to food deserts and things of that nature, but a lot of our issues are lifestyle issues.
Absolutely,
and stuff we passed on from generation to generation,
right. And so I wanted to do better. And then, you know, Dr. Charles Goodman is one of my closest friends, right, in life and ministry. And Dr. John Faison is another one. And they would work out regularly. You know, they're talking about like it's in their thing. Like I get a haircut at 8:00 in the morning. I'm in the gym by 10, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And I would hear them and I'm like, you know what? Let me get my shaky stuff together. And then my sister, Dr. Tony, is flipping tires and, you know, doing all that. And so I've seen that. I'm like, you know what? I need to get it together. And so I made a decision, because some of these things really start with a decision that if you make up in your mind that you are going to do better, then you will. And then you have to make the adjustments. Like first it starts in the mind, right? And then you go to paper and you write the vision. Like, when am I going to work out? What is this going to look like?
Yes.
So I came up with a plan, and now I am an athlete, right? I'm a ball player. So once I start working out, it's a thing that it just kind of kicks in.
You have muscle memory and your body remembers that. Okay.
And then I am the way my mind works. Once I get into a groove, I'm competing against yesterday's workout, right? Yeah. I'm a competitor. And so that was what was happening for me. And I was eating clean. I completely changed my diet. I announced to the church that, hey guys, effective immediately, I can't eat any more of your cakes, right? Like, I thank you, and you can still bring them, but I'm not going to eat it, right? Like, the young people could come to my office and get it, but if you all want to bring me things, like, let it be, be on this, and my congregation honored it.
Yeah,
they honored it, and they became supportive because I was transparent about it.
Yeah.
But then here's the thing, and I need to model before you all. Right, that which is healthy, not just spiritually, not just what is holy, but if my body is unwell because of my doing, right, that's not holy. Because to be holy, HOLY, is also to be whole, WHOLE, right?
Girl, you're talking.
When I said it, I was transparent about it to the congregation. Now we go through the first 30-day cleanse. And then I did, and I lost a little weight, but I could see, toning and things were taking shape. My cardio was better, and I could feel that in the workouts and in my preaching. But the weight was not moving like I wanted it to. So I went through another 30-day cycle. And I'm working out at this point, some weeks, like 7 days a week, because I'm in this groove. I'm on the road. I'm carrying my clothes, right? My workout clothes. Getting up super early in the morning so I can get at least 30 minutes in.
Right.
I'm doing all of the right things, but it's still not moving. And so at that point, I'm like, no, I need to really get at least the grief weight off of me. Right. Because of course, now I'm also grieving. Right. It's like I'm trying to mend a broken heart, figure out who am I in this world without my daddy in it too, right? For the first time in my life. And my dad and I, we also had we worked out together. He had, those genetic things, but my dad was an athlete. My father played football for Boston University. He's a ball player. An athlete all of my life. He was the one taking me to the playground, taking me to the gym, teaching me how to shoot a jump shot and all of that stuff. So that was one of the things that we did, together. And even during the pandemic, right? We did our walks together. We did our, things together. And so part of it too was honoring my dad, and what I know that he wanted for me was health.
Okay.
So it was like, so I called my doctor, and I had been with a nutritionist for a while, just trying to manage some things, because obviously, like, I also am predisposed to being overweight. That is easy for me, right? to just, so I had seen a nutritionist like through the years, just trying different things. I also have a, iron anemia. And so I wanted to learn to eat so that I wouldn't have to be on infusions and things like that. Right. So I already had this relationship with a nutritionist and a doctor. So I scheduled an appointment, and I went and I said, hey, I need to know, here's what's happened. And I shared what I just shared right now with you all. And I said, and I need to know, what are your non-surgical weight loss options?
Okay.
Eat a program that's not a diet. I didn't want to do a diet. Right. I needed something that I could sustain over the course of time, so that I could, just shift gears, especially I'm getting older, right? At this stage in my life, it is something that I could do and just keep on doing. And so, he shared some things with me. And then one of the things was this genetic diet. Where, they take a swab of your saliva, send it off to be tested, and then come back with basically a meal plan or the foods that are best for your genetic makeup. Okay. And not just your genetic makeup, but also taking into consideration your genetic predispositions, the things you're predisposed to. So for me, high blood pressure, diabetes, my daddy, my grandmother, all those are things that run on in my family. And so all of those things in consideration, he came back with a meal plan. And he's like, hey, so for the first 40 days, we need to be super aggressive. Because my thing was, can we just get this grief weight, this August to January weight off of me? I think if I could get that off, right, I might be able to make it. And so he said, listen, we're going to be very aggressive for about like the first 40 days. Exercise, and his thing was, you got to exercise at least 3 times a week for this amount. But of course, I hear 3 times a week, and it's like, no, I'm gonna raise you. I'll be exercising 5 times.
Yeah.
Competitor, right? And so we got into that groove, and literally, like the first 3 weeks, maybe, I was down about 17 pounds.
Wow.
And I was sticking with this diet. Now, there was nothing spectacular about it, right? I'm eating like no frills. I'm eating no frills. And there were some things that I was doing that I thought, right? Because, health food fads like juice, things like that. And for me, my doctor said, hey, don't want you to juice because it changes the sugar content of the fruit.
Okay.
Right? And with a genetic predisposition toward diabetes, we don't want you to have any extra sugar in your diet.
Okay.
So, or extra salt, or things like that. And so I had a very specific meal plan. Salmon, which I love. I can eat salmon every day. Shrimp was not on my list, right? All of these bland. I love a good Chilean sea bass. It was not on my list.
Okay.
It's a fatty fish.
Okay, right.
So I stuck to this first 40 days that, hey, we're going to be intense. Let's get this weight off of you. And then we'll move into a maintenance plan where we'll continue. And so I saw the nutritionist and a nurse every other week, right? For the first maybe, 8 weeks or whatever. And one of the things that they were also working with me on was how I eat, right?
Yes.
It was like, no, you don't have to clear your plate. Learn to eat until you're satisfied, and then that's it.
And push back,
and then push back, and that's fine, right? And then if you get hungry a few hours later, that's fine. You eat another small portion of something. And so now that it was something to train myself to do, problematic for culture. Because you're sitting at a table with a group of people and they're like, you barely eating. What's the matter with you? What's wrong? You sick? It's like, no, I'm trying to eat to live.
Right. Oh, yes.
Right? I have gone into, I'm over 40 now, right? So I've gone into the stage of my life where I'm eating to live, not to soothe, not to supplement, not to, I'm eating to live. And for me, I'm going to have to just go to satisfaction and not overindulge. Right. So that is for me, even, now becoming a spiritual discipline. Just eating and the ways I eat and the discipline around the eating and the exercise and trying to get this gallon of water in a day. Right. It also, I'm seeing the benefits spiritually. Right. That discipline in any area is going to flood over into other areas, right, of our lives and what have you. So did that. We got through the first portion of the diet, and I came to really enjoy, some different things. I could do like a trout, a flounder, basically whitefish.
Right.
There was no bread, no wheats, no things like that at all on my list. Avocado, like none of those kind of fun things. They just weren't on my list. But came to really love, cucumbers and carrots and blueberries and strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, things like that. I also had to discipline when I was on the road, which meant that I had to pre-plan a little more. Because I would have to pack snacks. Right? So because when you go to the airport, there really are not healthy snacks.
There's very few healthy choices.
They don't have healthy choices. And then if you're going to eat, it's the things that are not, that were not on my list, right? So I would have to, plan in advance and pack, then making sure that I get enough protein in. Also at that age where, your muscle mass and your bone mass, like it starts to decline. And so you want to get that in. And so just making sure that I was getting the protein, getting the exercise, getting all that. So we fast forward now. I started that in March. And so it's August, what is today, the 4th?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And as of this week, when I weighed in, I was down 42 pounds.
From March to August.
From March to August. And, I went into the maintenance phase, and there, it's not as strict as those first, several weeks. But, and there's some things that were not on my original list that I can add.
Okay.
Now. But it's just been, I got so used to eating on that original list that I'm not really tripping. It's become a habit. And then when you see what
you do for what, 21 days?
21 days becomes a habit, right? And so now, and then I was nervous that, hey, I'm not seeing the new nutritionist every other week, right? Now it's kind of a once a month that I go in and kind of we talk through, how did you do this month? And I said that I was going to keep that up, at least to the end of the year, because that accountability matters.
Yes, it matters.
Right? That going in and being able to recalibrate. And then also part of my journey is that my friends who are closest to me, I told them what I was doing. And here are my goals, y'all. And I check in with them. I'll send them a message that, hey, did this much, or hey, this week was not very good at all. Like, I don't know what is happening, or didn't even get an exercise in, and I share that with them, and then they know how to check on me. Right? So I think that also is an important factor with our health, that we will be accountable for our prayer life. We're accountable for other things, particularly as Christians, right? And then those of us who lead,
and creating those communities of self-care, those communities of accountability. So, I call it SEA, self support, encouragement, and accountability.
Exactly.
Creating that amongst, and you have to give people permission to hold you accountable. And so that's what you're doing when you called your friends and you're like, hey, you called me. We talked about it. We shared some of this. That's one of the reasons I got you on here, because I was like, hey, come on the podcast. Let's talk about this. But you're right. It helps to have those places of accountability.
Right. And for us, when you think about it, as preachers, as pastors, as Christians in general, we will be accountable. Those of us who ascribe, right, to an ethic of accountability, we'll be accountable for everything. Like how often, like we are, what we're teaching, right? Are we reading enough books? Are we getting prayer time in? But how often are we really being accountable, even for our health? And food choices, right?
One of our in June, I had 2 men of God, 2 pastors, male pastors. This month, I have you and Dr. Anika Wilson Brown, 2 female pastors on, and one of the pastors, Bishop Hodges, was on with me in June, and he said one of the wake up calls for him is that he went to preach for one of his buddies. And he said, after he got done, he said his friend who he went to preach for pulled him to the side and said, hey, I want to talk to you. I'm concerned about you. And he told him 2 things. He said, I noticed when you were preaching, you were very winded. And he said, and I've noticed that your waist size has increased.
Wow.
And he was like, first he was like, man, but he was like, that's a real friend. And a lot of times in ministry, people won't tell you the truth.
Right. I'll tell you, I went to preach for someone, and they said to me, it was in January when I made the shift in my mind, but it was, just a few days out. And I went to preach for them. And, he's kind of very like a big brother in ministry, and just said, Danielle, you need to train for ministry the same way you used to train for basketball. Right. Train for preaching the same way. not just your mind and your spirit, but the wear and tear
of your body
on your body, right? So you have to prepare. And I never forgot that he said that to me. So I often,
because there was a stat. I remember when I first went into ministry, that it was it has been said that preaching one sermon is like an 8-hour day of work.
Listen,
it is a total. It takes every aspect of your being. It pulls on you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. How many pastors quit on Monday?
Yeah.
How many pastors have committed suicide after preaching dynamic sermons? You know, because if we don't care for that whole totality of who we are, then we're really, really, really doing. And when we're doing ourselves and the congregation an injustice, and we're not being good stewards of this ministry. We got this treasure, but it's in earthen vessels.
Right.
And so earthen vessels have to be cared for.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so important, right? That we are caring for these bodies and prepping. Every Sunday, one of the things that I do, and well, not just Sundays, but whenever I preach, I have an Apple Watch. And so I go to the fitness app. And during the sermonic, I'll click on other. And so the app is running. So I track my preaching. As a workout. Typically, right, one sermon, and I preach about 30 minutes. You know, there's probably 4 minutes worth of singing in there. I preach about 30 minutes. If I'm doing an altar call or something, that might be another 10. So somewhere between 45 minutes of a workout clocked. And typically, I have burned 300 calories. So just last Sunday, I burned 424 total calories between the sermon and the invitation and going back to my seat, right? The week before that, or I preached before that, another 410 calories, right? Between a sermon, a piece of the sermonic, a sermon, and an invitation to people to come to Jesus and join the church. That speaks to because I ride the Peloton for 45 minutes and I might not burn 300.
You won't burn 300 calories,
right?
Unless you riding like really, really on a very, very tough.
Yes. What's the guy's name? What's the guy? The brother who talked to us so harsh. What's his name?
Is it Adrian? No, it's not Adrian. It's the other one. I know who you're talking about. I usually ride with Tunde.
Yeah. So Tunde won't, and Tunde is intense.
Oh, she's very
not going to burn 400 calories, even in a 45-minute ride. But preaching, right? Standing up, preaching a sermon is burning between 300 and 400 calories in one stand, right? So I think that speaks to the rigor on the body and why we have to prepare for preaching the same way that we would prepare for a sport, right? That we prepare if we're running. You and Dr. Bridgman, I love it. Going places to run.
Well, I'm trying to keep up with her. I cannot keep up with Dr. Bridgman. I told her I'm gonna have to catch up with her after I retire because.
The same, and you know who else does it? Dr. Henry Davis, right? Marathons, but the same way you would prep for a marathon is the same way that we have to prep these bodies because it is wear and tear. And so, I am committed really, to doing this for the long run, right? Whether not just because I'm a preacher, but because I want to live, right? And I want to live as long as I possibly can and as well as I possibly can while I'm living. Right. And then, of course, you enjoy results. You like to put your clothes on and you like to put your robes on.
Good. All of that. And it don't hurt to get a compliment every now and then.
Right. Or to look by the mirror. Like,
when people say, you look good. I say, tell me, please, because they're going to help me get up in the morning.
Right. Say it louder for the insecurities in the back. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. But these things are important. Right. And it doesn't hurt. Like, now I'm just about 10 pounds away from my college playing weight, right? Like to the size I was playing college basketball, softball, and tennis. And it feels great. It feels like accomplished. I feel, I wake up in the morning, I have energy, I can do more. It's just, it feels great. My head is clearer, all of these things. And so that has been my journey thus far, at least this year with health, wellness, not just the weight loss, right? But because, the weight loss is cool because there are, other parts, but it really is just the discipline of caring for this temple.
Yeah,
that really flows into the other areas of my life. I also have found, right? So I'm the senior pastor of a church, and now my members are getting on fitness plans and they're letting me know,
it's ministry.
Hey, Pastor, I signed up for the gym. Pastor, I ordered a Peloton.
Yeah.
Pastor, this our director of worship and arts has dropped about 50 pounds.
Wow.
Right. And so both of us, right, two of the most visible people for the people, are now making a commitment, right, to a life of health. And we're seeing it happen among the preachers. Minister Bianca has been working out and, just kind of eating different, and, myself, other ones. And the people come to us and they're like, hey, we're going to do this. Yeah. And so it is just, and
one of the things Dr. Nika Wilson Brown said when we were talking, she said, it requires sometimes us revisioning ministry.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from my own, I've been on this journey. I started this journey at 37. And so I've been on this journey for about 23 years. And I can tell you in the 23 years that I have been very serious and intentional about my health, wellness, self-care, not just physical, but my mental health, therapy, everything, my financial health, all those things, relationships, keeping my stress level down, all that. I cannot tell you the number of people, not just in my local church, but the emails that I get, Danielle, the inbox messages that I get.
Right.
People are stopping me saying, hey, you don't know how you motivated me. You don't know how you encouraging me.
Right.
Because I did a podcast interview with this podcast that's based on Peloton users. And they interviewed me. And I was telling them, I said, they saw my post on Twitter. And that's how they ended up inviting me to come on this podcast. Yeah. Well, I told them, I said, I really didn't start. I just one day said, I'm going to post my workout. And I did that like about 3 or 4 years ago. And then I said, after a while, I stopped doing it. And then people started saying to me, where are your posts?
Right.
So I post my workouts as a way of, because one of my hashtags is fitness motivation.
Right.
I do it to keep and remind our people to take care of yourself and to do what you need to do to be healthy, spirit, soul, and body. This is to me part of our ministry.
Right.
In Luke's gospel, I'll never forget our Bishop Lafayette Scales preached a sermon. He came to us and he did a leadership thing, and he talked about he said that Jesus grew. He preached from Luke's gospel where he talks about Jesus increased wisdom and stature and in favor with God.
Yes.
And he talked about the different areas of Jesus's life, how he increased, and when he increased in stature, he said that spoke to Jesus's physicality. And he said, have you ever thought about this? That our salvation depended on the fact that he was able to carry that cross.
Wow.
He carried his own cross up Calvary's mountain, up the Via Dolorosa. But what if he was not physically able?
Right.
And I never thought about, when he said that, I almost ran around church.
Yeah.
Because he said, if you thought about the fact that he was able to carry his own cross,
right,
he had to be physically fit to do that.
Right.
And so that was a paradigm shift for me. And I thought about what has God called us to carry?
Right.
That we are not physically, mentally,
Right.
Psychologically, financially fit and whole to carry.
Right. Right.
And so that is so important. And I think it's so I love you. I appreciate the way you live life holistically. And I believe in holistic.
We got to have balance out here.
Right, we got, and my word is harmony. I kind of feel like balance is a little.
Mine has been rhythm.
Rhythm. Yes, see,
I felt like
balance is it's not a sustainable model.
It's not.
It's not sustainable.
It's not.
And that's killing people trying to maintain balance. But what do I need right now? The rhythm. What is God saying for me right now? Do I need to rest?
Right.
Do I need to work out? Do I need to change what I'm eating? That's rhythm. That's harmony.
You mentioned that I'm an auntie, right? And my niece Alara is 3. She's my little twin, but she's 3. And one night I was watching them. I stayed with them and I put Alara to bed. And every time I put Alara in the bed, and then I thought that she was down and I would leave her room, I hear her little feet running down the hall. And I'm like, Alara, your mama is going to be home. So I'm going to need you to lay in this bed because I don't want her mad at me that you're still up after your bedtime. So the last go round, I get Alara in the bed and I'm just in there because this time I'm going to wait until she really falls asleep, right? So I'm just sitting there kind of rubbing her back and saying, all right, Ladybug, close your eyes. I can see your eyes. You're looking at me. I see you blinking your eyes in the dark, right? And then out of nowhere, as Lara was drifting off to sleep, she just randomly says, are you happy? And just that question from this little 3-year-old, she was 2 at the time, she's turned 3 since, made me rethink my understanding of, or this, my quest for balance. Right? Because I was saying, I said, Alara, I'm happy to be here with you. But when I looked at like the week in review, as this child asked, and I don't know why my mind just went into the week, it was like, no, this was not necessarily an enjoyable week. This was tedious. Like this was just a lot. And so once she went down and I was, waiting for her parents to come and just kind of sitting there and thinking through, I started that day a new habit. Every Sunday night before I go to bed, I ask myself, are you happy? And then here's what I do. I choose the rhythm for the upcoming week based not on trying to achieve balance, but based on what makes sense.
What you need.
And what I need. Yeah. And if I find on Sunday that last week, I did too much of this and not enough of this. And when I got to Sunday, I was not happy. Then I'm not going to repeat that in the upcoming week. And I get that, there's some things that there are.
You have to do. Right.
You have to do.
But then you got to find out what are your non-negotiables.
Exactly. And so now I live my life and I lead and serve based on a rhythm that here are the things that have to be done. But now what is the rhythm?
Leading from a place, and we talked about this with Dr. Jean Porter King with her new book, leading from a place of wholeness.
Yeah.
Not from a place of doing.
Right.
It's so funny. I sat with a spiritual director. And it wasn't even on purpose. It was kind of accidental. I was at an event and they had a spiritual director. Yeah. And they was like, well, if you want to talk to a spiritual director, we got somebody here. And I said, let me do it. So I signed up and I started talking to her about some things that I want to do in my retirement. Yeah. And because I'm looking toward retirement. I mean, I'm very, very seriously looking at retirement. And I said to her, she said, what are you looking for the most out of retirement? What do you hope to get the most out of retirement? And I said this to her. And when I said it, I didn't even realize until I said it and I heard myself say it. I said, I'm looking forward to just being
Mm.
and not doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I heard her, and she said, I want you to repeat what you just said. And I said it again. And I said, I've never said that before. I've never even let that come out like that. And when I said it, I heard myself say it.
Yeah.
But I had to repeat it to hear myself say it again. But then the Holy Spirit said to me, okay, that's good. But you don't have to wait to retirement to get there.
Right.
So retirement, I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making plans for that. But that's still a few years off.
Right.
So I don't want to wait 5 years from now to live from a place of being and not doing.
Right.
I need to practice that now. Because if I don't practice it now, women in ministry.
Right.
This is the other thing she said to me. Your body has been programmed to do.
Mm.
Because everything she said, you've been pastoring 31 years. There's some things you're doing because you are naturally programmed to do.
Right. Right.
And so if I don't learn how to just be and not live from a place of doing now, when I get to retirement, guess what'll happen? I'll find something else.
Yeah.
To do rather than be. You know what I'm saying? I'll repeat the cycle. So I think it's so important that we ask those questions, that we sit with people that can ask those questions. Like your niece asked you that question. We don't know where those questions are going to come from, but if we're listening,
right,
and we hear God speaking through life, through our niece and nephew, or a therapist or a doctor, or we listen when we put that robe on and it's too tight.
Yes. Yeah.
You listened to your body.
Yeah.
And that's why you were able to lose how many pounds between March and
42 as of this week.
High five. Listen, I want to shift real quick because we got a few more minutes.
Okay.
My tells me that podcast shouldn't be forever. So Dr. Brown, we serve on the board of the Women in Ministry Conference. It's coming up in September. And this month, I dedicated my podcast to self-care for women in ministry.
Yeah.
And I would love for us, for you and I both, to invite those women who are listening to us, who are in ministry, whatever way that looks or whatever that looks like for them, to the conference. And so I want you to say something about that in your closing remarks. One of the things I love about our conference is that we talk about this real life. And you can, those of you that are listening, Dr. Brown will be there. I will be there. We're both teaching in the conference. We're on the board of the conference. There are others that'll be preaching and speaking. Many that you know, our convener, Dr. Hale, all of our conveners, Dr. Hale, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Ingram, all of us will be there. Dr. Flake, and our board members, Dr. Sabrina Ellis, Dr. Bishop Julie McMillan, Courtney Clay Jenkins, myself, and Dr. Brown serve on the advisory board. And so this is a part of my regular diet. I was going to WIM before I was on the board.
Right.
And I honestly, it's been in spaces like that that has helped to amplify and keep me in this space.
Yeah.
Self-care, health, and wellness.
And also some of my most intimate friendships in ministry, outside of, the girls I grew up with, who we've been, friends for 20 years, 30, 40 years, right? At two, we met in the church nursery. That's Minister Ebony Jackson. But that whole crew now comes to WIM because there is value in the sisterhood coming together in spaces that are created kind of FUBU, right? For us, by us. And it really is about empowerment, growth. You'll hear some things there. You'll see. And one of the things that I often hear women in ministry, particularly younger women in ministry, my peers and younger, talking about is that I don't have mentors, or I don't have friends in ministry. I don't have, and WIM really is the kind of place that you can come and you will meet friends. You will meet people. I have a friend who came for the first time last year. And just in those 4 days, she has developed relationships with women around the country that she still is communicating with, right? Around issues like, hey, can we be accountability partners? We're both married and in ministry. And so they talk to each other and, talk through different things and communicate, right? Others who are in school and they've, connected with journey partners. And I think that's the value. One of the things that WIM brings, I mean, sometimes mentoring may not always happen or only happen up close.
Yeah.
And the thing about WIM is everybody is in the same space, and it's not a conference where it's like, oh, look, that's that, tier 1 of women in ministry, tier 2, tier 3. And then the rest of y'all get over there and stay away. No, everybody is just in there. We're all sisters.
Very touchable.
Yes. And there's some things some conversations that you can have, some things that you can learn just in that space that you may not get in other spaces, right? So I encourage every woman, right? If you are in ministry, I've been encouraging my brothers in ministry, like send at least 1 or 2 of your woman associates to WIM. Like, invest in that development, invest in the possibility of them being exposed to some things. You will find people at WIM at every stage of the journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Every stage. I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's important. When I first started coming to WIM, I was a staff pastor who was wrestling with this, knowing that God was shifting gears, that the expression of my call was going to change, that it was time for me to step into a senior pastorate. But I wasn't sure. I didn't have, I wasn't like, I didn't see that kind of up close. But then I got to WIM, and at WIM was Dr. Stewart. At WIM was a closer, look at Dr. Bishop Julie McMillan, who was a church man. He was a senior pastor already, like young and a senior pastor at that time. And so you saw women who were walking that journey, and then you were able to just ask questions that, hey, how did you know this? How did you know that? Right. And it's just a valuable space. I know that when I leave WIM, I am so like refreshed and empowered and feel like, yes, right, I could run on for another few months. But you also develop sisterhood. Yeah, it was there that I had been, and we joke about this, but I'm like, I saw you, Dr. Tony, in the Love Express for years. Since I was a teenager, you and Bishop were always preaching somewhere in New York, and I'd have the ink from the Love Express on my thumb. But it wasn't until I started going to WIM that we were able to actually develop a deeper relationship and sisterhood. You know what I'm saying? Where I could call you and say, hey, these are my workout goals, or, this is what I'm dealing with. But it was WIM that created, right, that space for that to happen. So sometimes if you want certain relationships, you got to get in the space where those are
being made. You're right. And I love that. And, I always say that one of the things I love about WIM is that it is, for me, it has been a healing community. It has been just, a breath of fresh air, an oasis for me. And, I think it's situated so wonderfully in the year, because by September, all of us are a little tired, and it just kind of gives you that boost to just kind of finish out the year strong in ministry, and then prepare you for the next year. You get, your vision is stretched. And just, I just love it because everybody's so real, and it's a really good community. Thank you, Dr. Danielle, for being my dialogue partner today. Thank you
for the opportunity.
Oh, girl, anytime. It has been wonderful, our conversation. I want to just let people know where they can find you. So we've been talking to Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown. She is the senior pastor of the Shiloh Baptist Church in Plainfield, New Jersey, and put her website up there. We are Shiloh.org. You can go there and follow her church, her ministry. She's doing great work there in New Jersey. You can also follow her on Facebook at Danielle L. Brown. Find her on Instagram at Pastor Danielle. You can find her on Twitter also at Pastor Danielle. I am so grateful that you have joined us on the Harmonize Your Life podcast. I'm going to ask that if you have not already done so, if you'll go to my website at drtonyalvarado.com, where you can find all the information for our self-care network. Women, you heard us talking about communities of accountability. Self-care requires that we put ourselves in spaces where we can get support, where we can get encouragement and accountability. Therefore, I'm asking or inviting you to join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self-Care Network. We have a network of women from all over the country, even some who are not in America, who are a part of this network. And so you can be a part of that. You can come into spaces where we're having these conversations, get strategies around self-care, health, and wellness, and what works for you. You can do so by going to my website at drtonyalvarado.com, and you can register or sign up for the for the self-care network. I also want you to go to my YouTube channel at Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. Listen, I'm so close to 500 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm trying to get to 500 in the next few weeks, because what happens with YouTube is when you get over 500 on your YouTube channel, you go up in the analytics. And so when you Google, because Google is one of the, and YouTube are the biggest search engines in the world. And so when you go there and you type in self-care, health, wellness, women, Black women, mental health, all that, there are things that are going to pop up. And if we're higher up in the analytics, you ain't got to search 5 pages down to find this podcast on YouTube. So please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and share the channel with others who need this information. You'll get notified when new episodes are uploaded, and you can binge out on the Harmonize Your Life self-care just like you do on the Bridgerton and everything else. All right. Thank you, Dr. Danielle. Good. I just got a new subscriber. All right. You was already subscribed. That's right.
I was already subscribed.
All right. So listen, join Dr. Danielle in subscribing to the YouTube channel. And when you see this episode, make sure you share it, and because it is going to be a blessing. Women in ministry, we love you. We are your sisters. We are your friends. We are you. And so we're speaking not out of a vacuum. We're speaking out of our personal experience. And I love to see our sisters be all that God has called us to be. And we're not better unless you're better. And we have to do this thing together. And that's what I love about my sister, my soror, my friend, the Reverend Dr. Danielle L. Brown. Thank you again for joining us as we close out season 10. Dr. Danielle, you close out season 10 for us, and we'll take a little break, a hiatus, and we'll be back with season 11 in just a few more weeks. All right. I'll see you all soon on Harmonize Your Life, Conversations for Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. See you soon.
Awesome.